we were talking, and it was snowing, and
Yes.
we had a couple of cycles actually since then where we had some heat wave and then snow. So we've been jumping, in Fahrenheit terms, probably 30, 40 degrees back and forth. It's just nuts.
Wow.
Yeah.
That makes it a little bit rough
Yeah.
because
Uh,
that change, such a drastic change in the temperatures.
the plants don't know what to do, and I think a lot of the insects this year have kind of disappeared. We've got no mosquitoes, hardly any wasps this year. It's actually great. So maybe that
Yes.
cycle helped.
Yes,
Yeah.
I agree. That's how it is here in Florida as well. When it gets cold, I mean, although Florida, you never think of cold weather, but
Right.
it
Yeah.
does get cold. I mean, our
Mm.
cold is around 50s sometimes,
Mm.
but
Right.
that puts all the wildlife in shock because they start warning you about lizards and iguanas and all that falling from the trees and
What?
just don't bother them. I mean, even when they
Mm.
fall, they
Mm.
may look like they're dead, but they're just cold. So just don't approach them. Don't mess with them. They'll
Oh,
warm back up and
seriously?
eventually
Wow.
go on their way.
That's so interesting. Mm.
Yes.
Anyway, Shandy, thanks for joining me. If I may introduce you very quickly, I think you and I were getting acquainted the other week, and there's just so much that you've done throughout your career, and it's really great to um, engage with coaches like yourself that have been through many different things and are in a position to really give back to the community. And I think it's awesome. So thank you for taking the time today. A little bit about your background for those that are listening. You started out in the aircraft industry. It wasn't something that you really enjoyed, so I think you moved on from that, and you started volunteering and doing things. And your mum was very ill back then with cancer, and so you became a caretaker. And sorry, obviously, to hear her passing. Um, then from that, you worked back in the workplace, you worked in the insurance industry, and that
Right.
inspired your helping people. I guess, you don't really hear that often from insurance people, but it was, I think it sounded like the start of that journey for you with the health benefits and the wellness and things like that. From
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
And
That's where my heart leads me is helping others.
yeah. And so from there, you started your personal journey of your own transition. You've got three amazing daughters. You've been through I shouldn't say a few situations, but obviously a couple of marriages, and have really been through that experience, which you now share with people. And I think at one point you said you weren't there was a time when you weren't sure what was going to happen, and you reached out to the Lord, and the next day someone called you up with, can you help me with this situation? And I'm just going to leave it
Absolutely.
at that point,
Yes.
and get you to tell a little bit of that story. What was that situation? How did that come about?
Well, hopefully I can do it and not become
Yeah.
emotional because it really touches my sensitive side. But I I lost my job in 2016, and I had always told my family I was going to move close to the beach one day. I just didn't know when that one day was. And so that's what got me to where I am currently living. And I moved here not knowing one person. I didn't have a job. I didn't have nothing. I was starting all over from the very bottom. And I had always been, as you described, in the helping industry is how I like to label it. And by leaving my family and everything I had known to start all over, it made me happy to be where I wanted to be, but at the same time, I didn't have any family, and I knew that there was a purpose, that I had more to accomplish, why I'm here on this earth. And I had just spent a lot of time on the beach, and I prayed and just continued asking for guidance to where he wanted me to be. And the next day, I received a message in my inbox on Facebook asking advice on an individual's relationship problems. And that was my sign right there that that's where he wants me to be. And I've been doing it ever since, and I wouldn't trade it for the world.
Yeah, yeah. It's pretty awesome, to be able to share your experience, but more importantly, help others uh, re rediscover themselves. Would you call it that? Yeah.
Yes, yes, because there's so many women that experience all different forms of unhealthy situations, and at the same time they are afraid. I don't know if
Mm,
afraid would be the proper word, but they they're hesitant to reach out for help,
mm,
and experiencing something so traumatic, they feel like they're worthless. And that's where I want to change things. I want them to
right.
know that that's not the case, that they can live that
Mm,
happy life and find the happiness and the joy and be loved like they deserve to be loved beyond what was programmed in their brain for however long they had to experience that.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I think we were talking last time about the neural programs that people develop, and it really becomes for the brain. It's what the brain knows, and
Correct.
everything outside that is unknown. And I think you use the word fear, but it's uncomfortable when it's unknown. And
Right.
the brain goes, well, you know this, it will be okay tomorrow, kind of thing, right?
Yes. And for a lot of women, I say women because that's who I help specifically, as women,
Yeah.
but
Mm,
men also go through the same
exactly.
thing. But it's been proven that your brain plays these different type of tricks on you to make you think different things. That's why once a person leaves those type of relationships, their mind is constantly thinking about that person, although this person may not have been healthy, but that's all that they know. That's all
Right.
that they're used to. And to them, that that's their version of healthy, because they don't know anything better than that.
Mm, mm. Yeah, yeah. We see a lot of that as well. Talking to people that work with inmates in penitentiaries and things like that. That, depending on their past conditioning, so it applies to many different areas. Depending on their
Absolutely.
past conditioning, that's all they know how to do. Whether it's stealing or hurting people or whatever, they've become um, programmed that this is the way normal is, right?
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And so, how do you help people break out of that? Without giving away all your secrets, but
I encourage them to start back at the very beginning,
mm,
because as a child, as a very young child, your brain starts absorbing everything, and it takes all that in. And so you have to peel back all of those layers to get to that core spot of your pain. And that's where I always start people, is
yeah,
peeling all those layers back, because if you don't, things will never be healthy for you. No matter how much you say things are okay, or what your case may be, it's never going to work.
Mm, mm,
I mean, I've had many people tell me that they've done the inner healing and self development, and then later on they will come back and say, well, how come I keep attracting this type of person, or how come this keeps hurting, or this
mm,
keeps going on? Well, this is exactly why. Until you really are sincere and want to better your life,
mm.
you have to go through that process. And I'm even guilty of that, because I thought I had dealt with all of my pain, but I didn't feel like I was going anywhere. And so once I went back and evaluated things, everything totally changed for me.
That's really interesting. It brings back a couple of things for me. I had a similar situation with someone who was going through one problem partner after another, and I think her words was exactly the same. Why do I keep attracting those kinds of men? And I had to
Yes.
stop and say, well, hang on, we need to find out what it is you find attractive, and that's when you really need to go back in time. And I don't know.
Yes.
I don't know who it was used an anchor metaphor. Sorry, I'm stealing a little bit of what you were saying there, but the anchor metaphor really works for me. I don't know if you use a similar one, but it's like that past conditioning is always going to be there like an anchor. And unless you pull up that anchor and really take a look at it, you can't cut that rope loose in order to allow space for something new in your life. Uh,
Correct. Yes. And it all begins as a child, like I mentioned, because you can go through good things. You can have the best life as a child through your teens. Everything's just wonderful. But then you may have been bullied or something, or you had been told you was overweight, or you would never amount to somebody, or you would never be successful in your life. All of
mhm.
these things are just buried over the years.
Yep.
And so until you deal with those things and that inner pain,
Mm.
it never seems to work out.
Yeah. Yeah. That whole. Uh, it's just imagining a new you without actually looking at how your brain is sabotaging that. Is that
Yes,
right?
yes, absolutely.
Mm. And it's that
And a
past
lot of people
conditioning.
don't understand that. Yes,
And
yes.
and
So it's not just as easy as saying, okay, well, I forgive somebody, or my life is better now. That's just you
mm, yeah.
letting other people, or putting on that mask to make people think that your life really is good, when on the inside it is not.
mm, mm. Yeah, I laugh because I did a blog a couple of years ago. It was a bit controversial. It was around the fake it till you make it, and my phrase was,
Yes, absolutely.
"You'll never make it
Yes,
actually unless you actually go back." Just faking it.
correct.
People know you're a fake. Unless you
Yes,
deal with those
yes,
demons, right? Mm.
right. Because you can only put on that fake smile for so long, but then my theory is you can't help others to better their life if you're not living that life that you're wanting others to do as well.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And you can't live and be in a unhealthy relationship, but you're trying to help others to get to that healthy stage in their life if you're not doing it as well.
Yeah. Yeah, a lot of people call them, I guess, limiting beliefs, and limiting values and things like that? Is that?
Yes. A lot of inner work, a lot of mindset changes and
Mm-hmm.
development, things along those lines.
Mm. Does it take a long time for people to really learn how to deep dive into themselves? Some people use hypnosis, for instance. Does that work, or have you tried anything like that?
It it depends on each individual person's situation.
Mm-hmm.
I can put 10 or 15 people in one setting, and each one of them will start on the same note, but they won't end on the same because everybody has a different story. Everybody has experienced different things. And so it's pretty much programmed to each individual to help with their specific needs.
Mm. And
And so
so,
sometimes it can
going.
be a short time, sometimes it can be a longer period. It just varies from person to person.
And you do that through questions, I guess. Is that?
Through questions and different activities, it's all done remotely. So I get to know each person I help on a personal level because we go back so far, and some of the questions that I ask, it's kind of sensitive, but it also builds that relationship and that trust because even today I have a lot of women that will message me just on a personal note, often thanking me, or they wouldn't be where they were at today if it wasn't for me. So it just it's all
Nice.
over the place. Yeah.
Mm, mm. Yeah. So I'm just wondering what the listeners, listening to this, whether it's women that are stuck in that situation. What needs to be their first step?
I'm sorry, you said what would be their first step?
Yeah, what needs to be their first step? What do they need to do in order to start breaking that cycle? It's kind of like, I guess it's no different to an alcoholic. If they don't know, then they
Yes.
they're in denial, right?
Correct, yes. The first step I would say is acknowledging the issue and asking yourself, do you want to, or are you ready to make that change to start loving you?
To start loving you. Mm.
Yes. Because in an unhealthy relationship, you lose all of that. You think you're worthless. You don't think anybody will love you. Everything's just negative in your mind, and that's not the
Mm.
case.
Mm. Yeah.
So that's where it has to start at. You have to acknowledge it, and then you have to focus on moving forward if that's what your goal is.
Hmm.
It's also been proven that women will leave an unhealthy relationship 7 times before
Wow.
they finally make that final commitment. I'm done. I had enough. It's time to move on.
Mm. 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 Yeah. So recognizing that we need to be grateful for ourselves, we need to show love to ourselves, is a first step.
Yes. Yes.
That's a really powerful one. I was thinking more listening to what people are telling you, maybe outside that relationship. Would that even work?
Not so much because they they don't know what you go through, especially for those that have been in unhealthy relationships. They can give you all sorts of advice, but unless you've walked in those shoes and know exactly what they've been through, most of the advice you get from people is so far from the truth.
Mm, mm,
I mean, it's
mm.
information you can't even learn, or I say learn, you can't get from a textbook. It's just from experience, because it's the hardest, one of the hardest things you have to do, especially if you've spent many of years with this person and now you have to walk away and pretty much shut all that off. That's real hard to do.
Mhm. And you know, I don't have a lot of experience in that area, so I'm just drawing parallels in different areas. And with alcoholism, again, not an expert in that field, you know, a lot of people don't tell you you're an alcoholic, right? You know, the
Right.
right, they're your friends, you know, they support you, they whatever, but no one wants to really face that demon of really
Yes.
telling you, right? Mm,
Yes. Almost like the the word you hear people say, sugar coating, like
right.
you just kind of
Yeah.
reach the surface, and you don't want to go any further than that, because then that's when it starts getting deep and you start looking at those pain issues and all of those
Right.
areas, and
Mm,
that's where a lot of people don't want to go. And depending on who you share your problems with, they most of the time are on your side of things, or
mhm.
they tell you kind of or pretty much what you want to hear. They're not brutally honest, is the way I put it.
Right. Right.
And sometimes that's what you need. You need somebody to just give you that swift kick and tell you, you're really
Mm,
messing up. You
mm,
need to do this, and you need to
mm.
take this path, not that path.
Yeah.
That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. You know, and many people are afraid to do that also because, you know, who am I to judge? Kind of
Yeah,
thing. You know, I've got my own trash to worry about.
right.
Right. Yeah.
Absolutely, yes.
Mm,
And
mm,
and just as simple as starting to love yourself, that's very hard for people,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think
especially for
last.
women, because we're givers, and we
Mm-hmm.
want to provide, and we want to make things better.
Right.
We put everybody's needs before our own, and it,
Mm,
that needs to change.
yeah. It's funny. I'm glad you brought that up. You know, because as you know, I developed AccuMatch behavioral map, which exposes our neural patterns, our programs that you talk about. And one of the things that I've seen over and over and over again is when we have a map of women, they're almost always higher other, especially if they've had kids, than self. You know, their
Yes,
focus is on that giving, supporting others, nurturing. Everybody comes before me, and sometimes the self is so low that it's
yes,
right. Um,
yes. That's perfectly said. That's
mm,
correct.
yeah, and I love the visual. You know, I'm a bit biased, you know, because for many of us, it takes a long time to really learn what questions to ask and how to unpack this. Whereas, you know, the visual of that map, I can just see it in my head because I'm visual. Is so powerful. I go, wow, never thought of it that way. I do focus on what everybody else needs. I do care about everybody else. If somebody says jump, I'm going, how high? What do you need? Um,
Yes,
mm,
yes. Just like you asked somebody, how do you show your self love? What does self love mean to you? And almost everybody that I ask that to gets emotional behind that question.
Mm, mm.
because they just don't know how. They don't know where to start because they're so used to giving it away to other people.
Nice. Yeah, that's a big one. Yeah.
Yes.
And last time we were drawing some parallels because of my business background. I always steer people into business. It's my own biases, sorry. But I've seen some of these same things in business, husband and wife businesses. And it's not necessarily the wife that's being abused. Sometimes it's the husband that's being abused. And
Yes. Yes.
and then they take it home. So they're working together and they're having all these challenges, and then they go home and it's more of the same. And so it becomes a norm, and people around them suffer, the business suffers, and then it just gets worse and worse. It really is a no out situation. There's
Right.
probably
Yes.
there's probably a dozen other business analogies that exist also in business situations. I guess the easiest one is an abusive employer, right?
Yes. Yes. Just like a boss or your supervisor may treat you differently, or the way that they speak to you. It all kind of comes together, but there's so many angles and directions that it goes you wouldn't imagine,
Mm,
because
mm,
your your relationships are built with people everywhere,
right.
and their behavior and the way that they speak to you, the way that they interact with you, or vice versa, with you speaking to them or interacting, it all comes out the
Mm,
same. But if you've always been in an unhealthy relationship, you don't look at that as being unhealthy because you don't know anything different.
yeah, yeah.
And so that's my goal, is to help women to realize all of those things, or most of the things that they experience, are truly unhealthy. Just as simple as I shared with my women today, a person or your partner texting you or calling you often when you're apart, "Where are you?" or "How long are you going
Hmm.
to be gone?" or "What are you doing?" You think that that is normal. You think that that's because they love you, but that's also an unhealthy sign of a relationship.
Yeah, yeah. Mm. Yeah, yeah. Look, I've got all kinds of other thoughts coming out, and
Yes.
we can talk for forever. Really
Yeah.
love what you're doing. Just looking at the clock, and just want to kind of summarize a little bit. Just to if we were to summarize this in two or three key points, key takeaways for people, what would your summary notes be here? Top three things.
Encouragement, helping women to know that they can live a better life than what they currently are in, and loving yourself, how important that is in every aspect of your life,
Mm,
and setting boundaries.
right. The world as you see it and experience it is not the only world out there.
Correct.
Yeah.
And it's okay to tell people no.
Mm, mm,
That falls in the category of self-love, because you're learning to love yourself, and by you telling other people no, you're creating those boundaries to be able to move forward with your life in a better way.
right. Awesome. Well, Shandy, thank you so much. I'd love for us to carry on this conversation. Maybe we'll do a follow up to this. Let's see
Okay.
what people want to talk about. There is so many aspects to this, as we've touched on. But it's really, really powerful and very important what you're doing. So thank you.
Thank
Keep
you.
up with the great work.
Yes, something I could talk about forever.
Yeah. All right. Take care.